I'm going to paint this picture in the style of Joseph Turner. Hi everyone, Steve Elliott here again in Painting in the Style of. Today I'm painting in the style of Joseph Turner. It has occurred to me since I've started this series how many favourite painters I have. And I said I'm really into Gustav Klimt and Rembrandt, and all of them, they've sort of played a part in my painting and sort of shaping the way I paint. And then I come along Turner and I think, yeah, here's another artist that I've admired most of my life. He's one of the few painters I've actually taken the time to go to a gallery to see his work. So I spent a day in the Tate, and most of the time I spent in the Turner gallery looking at the Turner paintings, which just blew me away. So big influence on my life and my painting. Not my life really, just the painting. He was born in 1775 and died in 1851. So he lived to be 76 years old. He was an English painter, and he painted in the Romantic style. And he was also a printmaker and watercolourist. And he was famous, I guess, for his expressive colour, imaginative landscapes and violent seascapes. So the painting I'm working off today is a seascape. It's not a particularly violent one though. It's quite tranquil really. And I've taken the nearest I could get to the sea because I live smack bang in the centre of the UK. So I've got a picture from a canal, which has got a little bit of water there. So that's the best I could do because I don't get around a lot. I don't travel a lot. I'm a bit lazy really. So he was born in London in the Covent Gardens to a low middle class family, and he lived in London all his life, retaining his Cockney accent and avoiding trappings of success and fame. And to be honest, I am not surprised he retained his Cockney accent, because I know a few Cockneys that have ventured as far north as the Midlands where I live, and they all retain their Cockney accent, and you could imagine them all being chimney sweeps, talking to Mary Poppins. So in fact, I even know one guy who wasn't even a Cockney, but his mum and dad was, and he had a Cockney accent and he never lost it. So yeah, it is a strong accent that I think people are proud of. Anyway, what has that got to do with painting? I don't know. Nothing. So he was a child prodigy. He was born to his father was a barber and wig maker, and his mother came from a family of butchers. So as I said, they were sort of lower middle class. But when Joseph was 10 years old, his mother started to show signs of mental disturbance, and she was admitted to hospital, and then she spent the next 19 years in hospital, where unfortunately she died. So that left Joseph Turner to be raised by his father, and he spent time with his uncle as well. But by the time he was 11, his dad was exhibiting his sketches and paintings in his barber shop, and he was selling them for a few shillings. And I bet he was really proud of his son, because he did say that he wanted him to grow up to be an artist. So he wasn't one of these parents that tried to discourage him. He actually wanted him to be an artist. And at the age of 14, he was enrolled to the Royal Academy of Art. And he actually exhibited there when he was 21. So looking at my painting now, then if we just take a look at that a bit, I've used my reference photo as a very loose subject, I guess. I've taken out the narrowboats. I didn't want them in it. I thought it just cut the painting in two. I've lowered the horizon considerably. and I've just concentrated on one small portion of detail, and that is the building there, which is in actual fact a public house called the New Inn. I think it's the New Inn in a little village called Shardlow, which was a 16th century waterways, sort of inland waterways, where a lot of trade was done. So anyway, as you can see, I've kind of cheated a bit and gone for a big sky, because a lot of Turner's paintings, especially the ones that I'm into, do have big dramatic skies. So I wanted this huge sky in there, and less attention to detail. So it was all about colour, really, and shapes, and then just a small item of detail just to draw you in there. So that's what I'm trying with this. And I did create lots of layers for this painting. Pretty much every colour that you see on the sky, I at some point created a new layer to start overlaying the colours, so the existing colours underneath could glow through rather than blending them together. I did keep merging the layers down once I've got the effect I wanted, but pretty much quite along the way I was creating new layers all the time, and I was changing the colour. I was finding that the only focal point I wanted was that building, and there was other things, like for example now if you look at the foreground, that is sort of detracting, making you want to look at that, so I take care of that in a short while. And then there's some trees that I think start to detract, so I mess around with them. So there's a lot of messing around with this painting just to keep a balance of colour and keep your eye focused on that small building. So at the end it doesn't look as though there's a lot happening, but I put a lot more effort into it than just painting. There was a lot of observation done in this painting rather than actual painting, and I made quite a few changes as I was going along. So while Turner was studying at the Royal Academy, he was making a steady income from commissions and sales, but apparently he was a bit of a stroppy character, and he would take commissions on begrudgingly and not always too welcomed. And he opened his own gallery in 84 when he was 29. 3 years after that, he became the Professor of Perspective at the Academy, and he taught there for 21 years. Although a lot of people said he wasn't very good at explaining things. He was a better painter than teacher, I guess. And all that while he was travelling to Europe, and he filled many sketchbooks on his travels, which he brought back to produce paintings from. And he was a controversial character. He never married, but he did have 2 daughters with his housekeeper. And as years passed, he became more eccentric and a recluse, living in near poverty. And all that time, his paintings were becoming more intense. And I guess that's kind of the period that I'm into, really. As he became more eccentric and he became a recluse, and he cared less, and he was living in near poverty, his health started to deteriorate in 1845, and he died 6 years later of cholera. So that was a sad end to what was a bright future. But he did leave over 2,000 paintings and 19,000 sketches. That is an absolutely phenomenal amount of work, and today is regarded as elevating landscape painting to that of historic painting. So he has had a major part in the history of art through the years. So that is kind of the story of Turner. Let's get back to the painting. I'm kind of getting close to finishing it, but I'm still thinking that foreground is still dominating the painting somewhat. So I'm going to have to sort that out, and I'm painting this single swan, and I'm wondering where I'm going to position that, add it more central, and you can see now I decide that I wanted to move it more to the side. So I've kind of got a lot happening on the right hand side of the painting and a little bit less on the left. And I didn't want the building to look as though a lot of care had been taken on it. I wanted it to look as though it had been painted with just a few brush strokes, really. So I'm sort of flipping between putting in detailed lines, because there is quite a lot of sort of fine brush work in Turner's painting, but you don't see it when you stand back. It's only when you get really close up do you notice it. And I'm sort of putting these fine details in, then softening them off again and losing them. And I'm looking at those tree branches all the while, and I'm thinking, while I'm looking at them, I've got to do something with that. They're too obvious. They're just standing out there, and I'm not digging it, man. I've got to sort that out. So there's lots of issues with this at this point, although it looks pretty much finished. So there you can see, I'm thinking those trees are distracting. I need to knock them back with some greys. And I was a bit worried that the whole thing was looking a bit muddy and sludgy. So then I start to add some sort of soft purples in there. And I actually selected that colour myself rather than picking it off the palette, because I do think it is in there, but I couldn't pick it up. So I did make that one myself. Then I put a few highlights in and then blended them down next to nothing again. Just so I thought, yeah, that's okay. That's looking cool. That's looking part of it now. And you can see this foreground now. I'm thinking that has got to be knocked back. It's just way too dominant. So I put a bit of the grey colour in there to push that back a little bit. So there's lots happening which looked like a really simple painting. And it was a painting of observation, much more so than painting. When I've worked on other paintings and you can concentrate on a figure or a character and paint that and then move on and do the next one, and it all looks great at the end. This was a painting where you had to be looking at the whole thing all the time, and you can see that because I'm not zooming in. I'm painting on almost a thumbnail. It must be quite irritating to watch, to be honest. So I am sorry about that. But it just felt out. I had to paint it. I couldn't do it close up. Again, I'm not sure if I actually achieved Turner or not. So I'm going to let you decide on that one again. But I did have a blast painting this. I really enjoyed doing it. I picked up a lot from it. Again, I'm loving the different style, the very loose style, the way that I had to observe the whole picture all the time and keep balancing things rather than sort of look at elements individually and work on them. And you can see I'm still not happy with it, and I'm tweaking it still. At this point, I'm thinking the building just looks a little bit too defined and painted. I know I put the chimneys in, but there we go. So that's how I deal with the trees. I start to scrub in some twigs, and I do that by knocking the opacity of the brush right down and start just brushing in some twig shapes, sort of following the contours of what I would imagine the trees would be, and then putting in a sort of a shadow side from the sun. And then I'm thinking, well, I look at the source painting and think he's got this sort of line of light coming from the sun right the way down. So I think, okay, let's get that in there. I think that's quite important. So I did borrow a lot from the Turner painting rather than just paint in my style. I kind of used a lot more of the Turner picture and put it into my picture rather than just painting my own picture. And here you can see I changed the composition completely by moving the old picture down a little bit just to drop the horizon and just to sort of reduce the size of the foreground. And then I went back in and started to paint the sky back at the top. Luckily I'd kept the base colour on a separate layer, so it was really easy to do that and just blend that in. So that's worth noting. If you do put a ground colour on, keep that on a separate layer because it makes it a lot easier if you want to make changes. And then I start working in. I go back to, I think I need to see the source painting again because I want to get some of these sort of darker wispy clouds in the top of the painting. And this is getting really close to the end now. I was just sort of finishing it off. I did take a lot. At this point, I put it into the PC, loaded it off my iPad, put it on the PC where I've got a big screen to have a look at it. And some of the brushwork looked a little bit ropey. So I felt it needed softening. So I go back into it again and start softening off colour. But you can see here, look, because I was looking at the whole of the picture, I was thinking we've got too much orange on the right and it's not balanced quite with the left, so I added a little bit of blue. And I think it's at this point I start blending down. Yeah, here we go. So I just spend a few minutes. I didn't spend too long, maybe 10 minutes, just softening off brush strokes and making the whole thing a lot softer. So that is it. That is pretty much the end of my painting in the style of Joseph Turner. I hope you have enjoyed this painting. I've really enjoyed painting it. If you have liked it, please give me a thumbs up. It helps out my channel a lot. And if you are new to the channel, please consider subscribing. I have lots of paintings all about digital painting and sketchbooks, digital sketchbooks and all sorts of things. And I would love to be sharing those with you. So hopefully I will see you all in the next one. Bye.